Humans discovered aliens were watching us for centuries. It all began with a simple discovery, one that no human had expected. In a dusty, forgotten archive deep within the city of Vienna, Dr. Elena Varga, an astrophysicist and historian, uncovered an ancient manuscript. The paper was brittle, yellowed by centuries, but the symbols on it were unmistakable. They were not human. At first, she thought it was a forgery, an elaborate hoax, but the precision of the symbols suggested otherwise. They were mathematical, almost musical in their structure. Elena had spent her life studying the stars, searching for signs of life beyond Earth. But this was different. This was not a signal from space, it was a record of observation. She showed the manuscript to her colleague, Dr. Stein, a linguist with a specialty in ancient languages. Marco stared at the symbols, tracing them with his finger. They are not from any civilization we know, he said. But they follow a pattern, like a language of logic rather than words. Over the next few weeks, Elena and Marco worked day and night, deciphering the symbols. As they pieced the manuscript together, they realized it described human history, not as humans remembered it, but as if it had been watched. Every major event, from the construction of the pyramids to the Renaissance, was documented with eerie accuracy. The more they read, the more they began to understand the manuscript's shocking message. Humans had been observed by another intelligence for centuries, perhaps millennia. At first, it was hard to believe. The idea of aliens watching humanity like some kind of experiment seemed impossible. But the manuscript contained details no ordinary historian could know. Specific conversations, lost civilizations, even the thoughts of rulers and philosophers. And the strangest part, the observers did not interfere, they only watched, recording every moment. Elena and Marco presented their findings to the International Scientific Council, a group of the world's leading scientists. The reaction was mixed. Some dismissed the manuscript as elaborate fiction, a curiosity at best. Others were more cautious. They suggested sending a message into space to see if the watchers would respond, but Elena argued against it. "They are already here," she said, her voice steady. "They don't need a message. They've been watching us all along." Meanwhile, strange things began to happen around the city. People reported shadows moving against the sun, unexplainable lights in the night sky, and electronic devices behaving strangely. Some even claimed to see figures in reflective surfaces, standing where no one could be. Elena dismissed these accounts at first, but soon she couldn't ignore them. They mirrored the descriptions in the manuscript. The watchers were not just observing from afar. They were close. The turning point came when Marco uncovered a hidden section of the manuscript. It contained a set of coordinates, scattered across the globe. Each coordinate corresponded to a place of great historical importance: Stonehenge, Machu Picchu, Angkor Wat, and others. But there was also a pattern. Each location formed a constellation when plotted on a star map. This is a map," Marco whispered. "A map of their positions relative to Earth. They are watching us from the stars, and possibly from closer than that." Elena felt a chill run down her spine. For centuries, humanity had believed itself alone, masters of a lonely planet. But now, it seemed, humans were actors on a stage, observed by beings whose motives were unknown. And the manuscript hinted at something even more disturbing. The watchers were waiting. Waiting for a moment humanity had yet to understand. The news leaked to the public. At first, people laughed at the idea of aliens watching humanity for centuries. Memes and jokes flooded the internet, and talk shows debated the authenticity of the manuscript. But skepticism gave way to fear when evidence started to appear in the skies. Satellites captured fleeting shapes moving in impossible formations. Military radar detected objects that defied the laws of physics. Even pilots reported silent crafts moving faster than anything Earth technology could produce. Governments scrambled to respond. Some tried to hide the information, while others prepared emergency plans. But Elena and Marco realized that no plan could prepare humanity for what was coming. The watchers were patient, and patience was their power. They had learned everything about humanity, its fears, desires, strengths, and weaknesses. One night, as Elena worked late in her lab, she received a message on her computer. It was not written in any language she recognized. The symbols were similar to those in the manuscript but arranged in a digital pattern that pulsed like a heartbeat. Elena felt the message before she understood it. It was an invitation. Or perhaps a warning. "I think they want to communicate," she whispered to herself. Before she could decode the full message, the lights in the building flickered, and a strange hum filled the air. The hum was not sound. It was a vibration felt through the bones, deep and rhythmic. Elena's vision blurred, and she thought she saw a figure standing at the edge of her lab. It was tall, impossibly thin, and its presence radiated intelligence. Then, as quickly as it appeared, it was gone. The next morning, news outlets reported strange energy readings across the globe. Power grids fluctuated, compasses spun wildly, and electronic devices displayed strange, shifting symbols. Humanity had been given a reminder. They were being watched, and the watchers were very real. Elena and Marco realized that the manuscript was just the beginning. It was a breadcrumb, a way to prepare humanity for the truth. The real discovery would come when the watchers decided to reveal themselves fully. And when that day came, nothing about the world would remain the same. The days following the first strange hum were filled with confusion and fear. Governments around the world issued statements assuring citizens that there was nothing to panic about, but their words rang hollow. Satellite imagery revealed shapes in the sky that could not be explained, moving in patterns that defied gravity, speed, and physics. The shapes were not constant. They appeared for only moments before vanishing as if they existed in another layer of reality. Elena and Marco became the focus of global attention. Scientists, journalists, and even political leaders sought their insight. Most wanted to know one thing: what did the manuscript truly mean? Elena explained that it was a record of observation, a detailed account of humanity's growth, wars, discoveries, and even private thoughts. They've been studying us like we're a subject in an experiment, Elena said at a press conference broadcast worldwide. And the manuscript suggests they are not just distant watchers. They are nearby. They have the technology to observe our lives in ways we cannot even imagine. The public's reaction was mixed. Some fell into denial, insisting that aliens watching humanity for centuries was absurd. Others panicked, stockpiling supplies and preparing for an invasion that had not yet come. A new wave of conspiracy theories emerged, claiming the Watchers had influenced history to shape humanity's development. Meanwhile, Marco focused on decoding the digital message Elena had received. Using advanced algorithms and his knowledge of ancient languages, he discovered that the symbols were not just words, they were instructions, a method to open communication. The message described a way to align Earth-based technology with a cosmic frequency, one that would allow the Watchers to reach out safely without revealing themselves fully. It's like a key, Marco explained to Elena. If we follow it correctly, we might be able to talk to them, or at least understand why they have been observing us. Elena hesitated. The risks were unknown. The Watchers had remained silent for centuries, never intervening. Reaching out could trigger a response far beyond humanity's control. But curiosity and the weight of the discovery pushed her forward. Over the next weeks, a small team of scientists was assembled to follow the instructions. They built equipment to emit the frequency described in the message, aligning antennas across continents. As the machines activated, the sky seemed to ripple, faintly glowing as though the atmosphere itself had become a screen. Then, the first clear signal appeared, not in sound or light, but in thought. Elena felt it as a presence in her mind, a wave of understanding. It was not a voice, but an awareness, a consciousness that seemed to merge with hers. She saw visions of their observations, ancient humans hunting in the savannah, cities being built, wars erupting, and inventions taking shape. Every detail was recorded in their memory. They've been watching our entire history, Elena whispered, trembling. Not just observing, learning. Marco, too, experienced the connection. Images and emotions poured into him. Curiosity, patience, and something alien that could only be described as care. The Watchers were not malevolent, at least not in any human sense. They were like scholars of life, studying civilizations across the universe, documenting, cataloging, and perhaps waiting for something humanity could not yet understand. The team decided to test the connection further, sending a simple thought. Who are you? Why us? The response was immediate, yet abstract. A vision unfolded showing a galaxy teeming with life, civilizations rising and falling over millennia. Among these stars, humanity was small but unique. The Watchers had chosen Earth because of the species' potential, its creativity, intelligence, and unpredictability. They wanted to see if we could survive, if we could learn, if we could grow, Elena interpreted aloud. We were an experiment of understanding, not domination. Even as this revelation spread, strange incidents continued on Earth. People reported seeing figures moving through shadows, glowing eyes in forests, and objects vanishing in their homes. Animals acted erratically, staring at empty skies. Scientists realized that the watchers were not merely observing, they were beginning to interact with the world subtly, testing reactions. Governments struggled to respond. Some sought to hide the events, fearing mass panic. Others attempted to contact the watchers, using their own technology, but received no reply. It became clear that only the method outlined in the manuscript allowed safe communication. Amid this chaos, a mysterious group of individuals emerged, calling themselves the Watchers' Witnesses. They claimed to have been aware of the alien presence for generations, passing secret knowledge through families. Their accounts were bizarre yet detailed, describing tools, rituals, and observations that aligned with the manuscript. Elena met with the group, skeptical but intrigued. They revealed that the Watchers had influenced humanity subtly over the centuries, guiding discovery and culture in ways invisible to ordinary humans. Some inventions, some art, even some philosophies, were inspired by signals or patterns left behind by the Watchers. "You've been taught to think you are alone," one of the witnesses said. But every great leap in human history carried a whisper from them, unnoticed and unseen. And now, they are preparing for the next step. The next step. Those words haunted Elena. What could it mean? Were the Watchers preparing humanity for contact, or for something far more profound, something that could change life on Earth entirely? Then came the event that shook the world. Across every continent, at exactly the same time, the sky erupted in light. Geometrical patterns of glowing energy appeared, stretching from horizon to horizon. Satellites recorded shapes in the atmosphere that could not exist according to earthly physics. The Watchers had revealed themselves, not fully, but enough to show their presence unmistakably. People panicked and marveled simultaneously. Religious leaders declared prophecies fulfilled. Scientists scrambled to understand the phenomena. And in laboratories across the globe, Elena and Marco saw the patterns matching the coordinates in the manuscript. The Watchers' presence was both everywhere and nowhere, their observation complete and undeniable. Amid the awe and fear, humanity began to realize something crucial. This was a turning point. The Watchers had spent centuries understanding humans, and now it was humanity's turn to understand them. Elena and Marco looked at each other. The world had changed forever. And the manuscript, once dismissed as a curiosity, had become the key to survival, knowledge, and the future of the human race. The sky had become a canvas of impossible patterns, shimmering with geometrical shapes and colors no human eye had ever named. Humanity watched in awe and terror as the Watchers made their presence undeniable. Governments declared states of emergency, while scientists and civilians alike scrambled to interpret the signs. Every living person felt a mixture of fear and wonder, an instinctual awareness that something beyond comprehension had arrived. Elena and Marco were at the heart of the global effort. Using the manuscript as a guide, they tried to decode the Watchers' message. The patterns in the sky corresponded to the ancient coordinates Marco had plotted months earlier. Each location seemed to pulse with energy, as if the planet itself had become a giant interface for the Watchers' signals. "They are not just observing," Marco said, pointing to the pulsating coordinates on a global map. "They are communicating. But it's not words, they are using Earth's energy as a medium." Elena nodded, realizing the enormity of it. Humanity had spent centuries imagining aliens as invaders, conquerors, or monsters. But these beings were neither. They were patient, deliberate, and precise. Their goal had never been to dominate, but now it seemed they wanted interaction. The first successful attempt at direct communication came unexpectedly. Using the instructions in the manuscript, Elena's team projected a synchronized signal across the coordinates. The signal formed a faint lattice in the air, glowing and vibrating. And then it began to move, like a living network. Elena felt the presence again, stronger this time, pressing gently against her mind. Unlike before, it was not merely observation, it was inquiry. Questions flowed into her thoughts. "Who are you? What do you seek? What is your purpose?" Elena responded mentally, focusing her mind on simple concepts: curiosity, survival, learning, and connection. The presence pulsed in acknowledgement, and then, in a moment of clarity, images flooded her consciousness. She saw planets with cities built in ways humans had never imagined, oceans of light where beings swam through energy, and societies that communicated entirely through thought. "They are showing us their world," Elena whispered to Marco. "They want us to understand, to see them as they are, not as monsters." But not everyone on Earth reacted with wonder. Fear spread faster than the patterns in the sky. Militias formed, religious factions interpreted the event as judgment, and governments debated military action. Some argued that the Watchers had been observing for centuries with a hidden agenda and that humanity could not afford to wait to understand. The first confrontations came from the skies. Military satellites detected anomalies near the glowing patterns, but when drones approached, they vanished instantly. Aircraft attempting to investigate were met with distortions that left them grounded. It became clear, any hostile action was impossible. The Watchers' technology was far beyond anything humans had created. Amid the fear and confusion, the Watchers' witnesses came forward again. They revealed knowledge passed through generations. The Watchers tested civilizations not for conquest, but for readiness. Humanity had reached a threshold, a point where the Watchers could begin a new phase of interaction. They've been preparing this moment for centuries, one witness said. You are standing at the turning point. How you respond will determine what comes next. Elena realized the weight of those words. Humanity was not simply being observed anymore, it was being evaluated. Every choice, every reaction, every thought could influence the Watchers' next step. The stakes were higher than any war, higher than any natural disaster humanity had faced. Over the next days, the patterns in the sky became more complex. Symbols resembling mathematical constructs, music, and even art appeared, suggesting that the Watchers communicated not just through logic, but through creativity and emotion. Scientists across the globe struggled to translate these messages, and every breakthrough brought a new question. Then, the first direct contact occurred. In a remote desert, a bright column of light formed, hovering without wind or sound. Inside, shapes began to take form, not humanoid, but something recognizably intelligent. Elena and Marco approached cautiously, feeling the same mental presence as before. This time, the Watchers communicated more clearly, not with images, but with feelings and shared understanding. We are observers. We are scholars of life. We have watched your species because you are unique. Your creativity, your capacity for empathy, your unpredictability, these make you noteworthy. Elena felt a strange calm. Despite their alien form, the Watchers conveyed no threat. They did not seek war or conquest. Instead, they wanted to share knowledge, to establish a bridge between civilizations. But not everyone saw it this way. In the capital cities, protests erupted. Some demanded an immediate response, others a military strike. Rumors spread that the Watchers had manipulated humans for centuries, guiding their development like pawns. Fear escalated into chaos, and for the first time, Elena realized that humanity's greatest challenge might not be the Watchers themselves, but humanity itself. Meanwhile, Marco discovered a startling truth hidden in the manuscript. Buried among the observations was a warning. When humanity learns the truth, the Watchers will ask for understanding in return. Those who are not ready may falter. The words chilled Elena. Understanding the Watchers was not just about learning, they required trust, cooperation, and perhaps a level of collective consciousness humanity had yet to achieve. The manuscript suggested that centuries of observation were leading to this precise moment. The Watchers had watched humanity grow, to see if it was capable of rising to this challenge. As days turned into weeks, communication improved. Simple concepts were exchanged, numbers, colors, and eventually abstract ideas. Humans began to understand the Watchers' motives, and some began to see the pattern of their own history in a new light. Humanity had not been alone, not for centuries. The skies, once terrifying, became classrooms. Every flicker of light, every geometric pattern, carried lessons about the universe, life, and intelligence. For the first time, humans realized that the Watchers were offering something priceless, knowledge and perspective. Yet, Elena knew the world stood on a knife's edge. Fear could undo the fragile connection. Governments could react with aggression. Humanity's instincts for survival, suspicion, and control threatened to destroy the opportunity the Watchers had presented. One evening, Elena and Marco watched the sky together. The patterns shimmered and shifted in ways that seemed almost playful, as if the Watchers were observing humanity's reactions. Elena felt a sudden clarity. The Watchers had been patient because patience was necessary. But patience was not infinite. We have to be ready, she said quietly. Ready to understand, to cooperate, to rise above our fears. This is the moment they've been preparing us for. The next step depends on us. And so, humanity waited, watched, and learned. The Watchers were no longer hidden. They were part of the world, silent teachers whose lessons stretched across centuries. But the final lesson had yet to come. The world had entered a state of unprecedented tension. Cities were no longer the same. The skies had become stages for something beyond human comprehension. Patterns of light and geometric formations danced across every continent, visible to anyone who looked up. Some were beautiful, like celestial art. Others were strange, even unsettling. They seemed to respond to human thought, almost as if the watchers were measuring the reactions of billions of minds at once. Elena and Marco worked tirelessly, coordinating with scientists across the globe. Universities, private labs, and government research centers became hubs for decoding the watchers' signals. For the first time, humanity was united by a common purpose, not war, not conquest, but understanding. And yet, the unity was fragile. Fear simmered beneath the surface, threatening to erupt into chaos. Religious leaders claimed the watchers were angels or divine beings, sent to judge humanity. Others warned that humans had been manipulated for centuries, their development steered by alien influence. Militias and extremist groups formed, threatening anyone they deemed too compliant with the watchers' will. Nations faced internal unrest, unable to balance the need for public order with the reality of the extraordinary events unfolding above them. Despite the chaos, moments of profound clarity began to emerge. The watchers were patient, deliberate, and nonviolent. They had never interfered to stop wars, prevent disasters, or guide technology directly. Instead, they had observed. They had documented humanity's triumphs and failures, its brilliance and cruelty. And now, through the manuscript and the sky's signals, they were offering humanity a choice: to engage, to understand, and to grow, or to reject the opportunity and remain isolated in fear. The first philosophical challenge came from the team itself. Elena realized that while humans were beginning to decode the Watchers' messages, their understanding was still shallow. Humanity was obsessed with what the Watchers were, what they wanted, and what they might do next, but few were willing to consider what the Watchers had revealed about humanity itself. "We are being judged," Elena said to Marco late one night in the lab. "Not for what we've built, not for our technology or wealth, but for how we think, how we respond, how we care for each other." Marco frowned. "But isn't that what humans have always done? We've always struggled with our own nature, our morality, our choices. Now, it's like the entire species is under a microscope." "Yes," Elena said. "And the microscope is cosmic. Every fear, every act of kindness, every moment of cruelty, it's all visible. The Watchers have seen it all. And now they are waiting for a response." Governments attempted to impose order, but the influence of the Watchers was impossible to contain. People everywhere reported visions, feelings, and flashes of insight, subtle impressions of understanding and interconnectedness. Some felt an overwhelming empathy, suddenly aware of the experiences of others across the globe. Others were terrified, sensing that their private thoughts were exposed. It became clear that the Watchers' observation was not just external; they could perceive consciousness itself, the very essence of thought. Humanity realized, for the first time, that knowledge alone would not be enough to engage with the Watchers. It required trust, cooperation, and a collective willingness to grow beyond fear. Amid this global awakening, a strange phenomenon began. Some individuals reported spontaneous comprehension of alien mathematics, concepts of physics that defied human understanding, and insights into patterns in nature that had previously seemed random. Schools and universities became incubators for new ways of thinking, merging science, philosophy, and art in ways that no one had attempted before. But the philosophical questions grew heavier. If humanity had been observed for centuries, were human achievements truly free, or had the Watchers subtly influenced them? Was human culture their creation, or had they merely guided what was already possible? Some scholars argued that history itself was tainted, that free will had been an illusion under constant surveillance. Others insisted that observation did not negate choice, that humans had always acted within their own agency, even under watchful eyes. Elena and Marco found themselves at the center of a global debate. They emphasized a delicate truth: the Watchers were not tyrants or manipulators, but witnesses. Humanity's choices remained human. The observers had simply documented them. But the Watchers' presence magnified the stakes. Every decision, every act of cruelty or compassion, now carried a weight far beyond Earth. The Watchers themselves began to respond in new ways. Patterns in the sky became interactive, shifting in real time according to human thought. Simple questions sent from human observers could produce visual answers, and the watchers began to reveal parts of their own history. A galaxy filled with civilizations rising and falling, interconnected in a vast network of observation and knowledge. It was a humbling revelation. Humanity, for all its pride and technological advancement, was still young. The Watchers were a reminder that intelligence and civilization were rare and fragile, and that the universe held lessons far beyond earthly experience. Amid these revelations, humanity also faced moral challenges. Some people saw the Watchers' knowledge as a tool for power. Military and corporate interests sought to harness the connection for control, profit, and advantage. Others feared the loss of privacy, autonomy, and independence, arguing that engagement with the Watchers could lead to subjugation, even unintentionally. Elena realized that the final test would not be technological or scientific. It would be moral. Could humanity rise to the challenge of understanding, empathy, and cooperation, even under pressure? Could humans prove themselves capable of receiving knowledge responsibly, rather than exploiting it for destruction? One evening, while observing the sky from a high plateau, Elena had a sudden realization. The Watchers had given humanity a choice, but the choice was not binary. They were offering not just knowledge, but perspective, an opportunity to evolve, to see the universe not as conquerors or consumers, but as participants in a vast, interconnected web of life. And if we fail? Marco asked quietly. Elena looked at the patterns glowing above them. Then we remain small, she said. We continue on our own, unaware of how much we've been capable of. But if we succeed, we become something more than human. Something worthy of their attention and capable of understanding it. The Watchers had been patient for centuries. Now, the world held its collective breath. Every act of kindness, every attempt at understanding, every moment of human cooperation became a test. The skies pulsed with possibility, and humanity began to realize that the greatest challenge was not the aliens watching them, but the humans themselves. The world had changed in ways that no one could have imagined. Humanity's skies were alive with alien patterns, the pulse of knowledge flowing into every corner of the planet. Yet, despite the awe and wonder, fear simmered just beneath the surface. Governments struggled to maintain order, while ordinary people wrestled with questions that had no easy answers. Who were these Watchers? What did they truly want? And what would happen if humanity failed to understand? Elena and Marco became global figures, not for fame, but for responsibility. They coordinated the first large-scale attempt to communicate with the Watchers using synchronized signals spanning continents. Tens of thousands of devices, antennas, and satellites were linked to form a network designed to bridge human thought with alien understanding. As the network activated, the first tangible interaction occurred. From deserts to mountains, forests to oceans, light patterns converged into a single, immense shape above the Earth. It was not a spaceship, nor a physical entity, but a form of intelligence made visible through energy. The Watchers had revealed themselves fully for the first time, not as a threat, but as beings of pure awareness. The connection was overwhelming. Humanity could feel their thoughts, their questions, their curiosity. In return, the Watchers seemed to receive humans' thoughts as well, not through words, but as emotion and intention. Trust was the key, and the world realized, almost instinctively, that aggression or deceit would destroy the fragile link. Amid the marvel, not all humans reacted with calm or curiosity. Some nations demanded the Watchers leave, citing sovereignty and fear of manipulation. Others attempted to manipulate the signals, to control or weaponize them. For the first time, humanity faced the true test. Could it act as a unified species when confronted by intelligence far beyond its own? In laboratories around the world, strange phenomena emerged. Scientists discovered that the Watchers' patterns contained instructions, methods to manipulate energy, understand physics on levels previously unimaginable, and perceive dimensions beyond the human senses. These were gifts, but they came with responsibility. Misuse could be catastrophic. Elena and Marco noticed that the Watchers did not dictate use. Instead, they presented humans with choices. Every nation, community, and individual was being tested, not for obedience, but for wisdom. The first collaboration occurred when a team of international scientists, guided by the Watchers' signals, successfully manipulated a new form of energy. It was clean, abundant, and powerful, capable of solving problems that had plagued humanity for centuries: energy shortages, environmental degradation, and even some forms of disease. But the energy also revealed human flaws. Some nations wanted to hoard it, others sought to weaponize it. The Watchers' presence was a reminder: Technology alone could not solve humanity's challenges. Ethics and cooperation were equally important. Amid these trials, everyday humans began to experience subtle changes. Some reported heightened empathy, as if they could feel the thoughts of strangers across the globe. Others discovered new ways of thinking about nature, art, and mathematics. Children learned patterns and concepts that had been beyond comprehension, and artists created works that mirrored the watch's geometry, light, and motion. Humanity was evolving, but unevenly. Fear and selfishness still threatened progress. Elena realized that this was the watch's true test. They had observed humanity for centuries, waiting for the moment when humans could respond responsibly to knowledge and awareness. The manuscript had been a first step. The skies and signals were the next. And now, humanity had a choice: rise to the occasion, or falter under the weight of its own flaws. Meanwhile, Marco detected anomalies in the watch's signals, subtle hesitations, questions embedded within patterns. The watchers seemed to be probing humanity's readiness for a deeper connection, asking indirectly, "Can you work together as a species? Can you rise above fear and division?" The answer was not yet clear. Conflicts persisted, both political and social. But glimpses of unity appeared in extraordinary ways. Cities collaborated on energy experiments, sharing knowledge freely. Scientists and philosophers debated ethics, creating new frameworks for thought. Artists, musicians, and engineers worked together to understand the watch's forms of expression. Humanity was learning to cooperate, even imperfectly, under pressure. Then came the moment that would define the turning point. A coordinated global signal, sent by millions of humans acting in unison, was received by the watchers. The light patterns above Earth intensified, and for the first time, humans could perceive the watchers' reaction as something almost tangible: admiration, curiosity, and, unexpectedly, encouragement. The watchers did not speak, nor did they touch. But humanity felt their acknowledgement. It was a confirmation that cooperation, understanding, and trust could create bridges across the vast gulf between species. Yet, the watchers' observation had also revealed a critical truth: human readiness was not uniform. Those who acted selfishly, violently, or deceitfully risked undoing the fragile progress. Elena and Marco understood what had to be done. They proposed the first global council, not of nations, but of humans representing thought, knowledge, and ethics across every culture. The council's mission was simple but profound: to demonstrate that humanity could engage with intelligence far beyond its own and act as stewards of the knowledge offered by the watchers. The council convened in a remote location, shielded from the public eye but connected through signals visible in the sky. 4 days, they debated, questioned, and experimented, testing their understanding of the watchers' patterns, ethics, and technology. Conflicts arose, but slowly, the members began to realize a universal truth: humanity's survival and growth now depended on collaboration, not competition. At the end of the first council session, a moment of clarity arrived. The watchers projected an intricate display across the sky, more complex and beautiful than anything humans had seen. For a brief instant, billions of minds felt connected, as if humanity itself was united in thought, emotion, and intention. The watchers had acknowledged their readiness to take the next step, but only if humanity could continue to rise above division and fear. Elena turned to Marco, her eyes reflecting the patterns above. "This is only the beginning," she said. "The watchers have been patient for centuries. They will continue to guide, test, and teach, but now, it's our choice. What we do with this knowledge, how we respond to each other, that will define our future." The watchers' observation was no longer passive. Humanity had reached the first milestone in a cosmic relationship that had taken centuries to arrive at. But the ultimate test, the moment that would determine whether humans could fully engage with intelligence beyond their world, was yet to come. And it would challenge everything humanity believed about itself. Humanity had reached a fragile equilibrium. The watcher's presence in the sky was no longer an occasional phenomenon. It had become a constant, a living backdrop to everyday life. People everywhere experienced subtle changes in perception, flashes of understanding, moments of empathy, and glimpses of thought that seemed to connect distant minds. But not all humans welcomed the watchers. Extremists, fearful of losing control, launched sabotage attempts against the communication network. Certain governments tried to weaponize the alien signals, attempting to harness energy and knowledge for their own power. Accidents occurred. Experimental labs collapsed, energy surges damaged cities, and confusion spread. Humanity's first test of responsibility was underway, And not all passed. Elena and Marco worked tirelessly, trying to mediate between nations, scientists, and the public. They realized that the Watchers were observing every decision, every act, every reaction. It was no longer a question of mere communication or curiosity. Humanity's behavior was being judged on a global scale. One evening, as Elena reviewed the latest data from the sky, a sudden pattern emerged, one that had never been seen before. The Watchers were sending a warning. Geometric shapes twisted and pulsed, forming sequences that suggested a potential disaster. Earth itself could be destabilized if human actions grew too chaotic. The Watchers' energy was vast, and even unintentionally, humans could trigger consequences they could not control. "This isn't just a test anymore," Elena said to Marco. "They are showing us that our mistakes could be catastrophic, not just for us, but for the planet itself." The first major crisis arrived within days. A series of massive storms, unlike any previously recorded, struck simultaneously across multiple continents. Earth's magnetic fields fluctuated, strange energy surges disrupted communication, and millions were displaced. Scientists initially blamed natural causes, but Elena and Marco recognized the truth. The Watchers were responding to humanity's instability. It was a controlled demonstration of power, a warning to show the stakes of failure. World leaders convened emergency sessions. Panic spread. Some called for immediate military action against the Watchers, arguing that humanity could not survive under such constant observation. Others advocated for calm, reasoning that the alien presence offered knowledge and technology humanity could not yet fully understand. Elena proposed a radical idea, a global demonstration of cooperation. Using the Watchers' signals, she suggested that every nation contribute to a synchronized response, harnessing energy, logistics, and human ingenuity to stabilize the planet. It would be humanity's ultimate act of collective responsibility. The plan was risky. Coordinating billions of people across nations, cultures, and political divides had never been attempted. Yet it was the only way to prove that humans could rise above fear and division. Marco set up a global network, using satellites, signals, and the Watchers' energy patterns as a guide. As the coordinated effort began, humanity's focus shifted. Cities shared resources, engineers and scientists collaborated across borders, and millions of ordinary citizens followed instructions broadcast through the synchronized signals. People who had once distrusted each other now worked side by side, guided by a purpose greater than survival: the chance to prove humanity's worth to the Watchers. For days, the skies pulsed with energy as humans and Watchers engaged in a shared effort. Elena could feel the Watchers' presence more clearly than ever before, not as observers, but as participants in the process. They were guiding, teaching, and subtly correcting mistakes without taking control. Humanity was learning, adjusting, and cooperating on a scale never before seen in history. Then, as the final step of the operation commenced, the skies erupted in a display of unimaginable beauty. Light patterns intertwined with human thought, forming shapes that mirrored emotions, ideas, and creativity. The storm subsided. Magnetic fields stabilized. Energy flows normalized. Humanity had succeeded in the first global challenge, and the Watchers' acknowledgement was palpable. Yet, amidst the triumph, a sobering realization struck Elena. Not every human had acted responsibly. Some regions had resisted, sabotaged, or failed to cooperate fully. The Watchers' signals indicated that these actions had consequences. Humanity's success was partial, and the observers were still testing the species' ability to unify. Elena turned to Marco. "We've passed the first major test," she said, her voice trembling with both relief and fear. "But the Watchers are patient. They are preparing for something greater. The real challenge is yet to come." Marco nodded. "We've seen what we can achieve when we work together. But we've also seen what happens when fear and selfishness take over. Humanity's greatest challenge isn't understanding the Watchers, it's understanding itself." In the days that followed, humanity began to reflect collectively. Education systems integrated lessons derived from the Watchers' signals, emphasizing empathy, ethics, and cooperation. Artists and philosophers used the patterns in the sky to inspire new ways of thinking. Governments formed councils not to compete, but to coordinate global initiatives. Humanity was changing, not because it had to, but because it now had a choice. And through it all, the Watchers remained. They no longer hid, yet they never forced. Their patience continued, their observation constant. Humanity had survived its first crisis, but the message was clear. The Watchers had far more to reveal, and the stakes would only grow higher. Elena looked at the night sky, her eyes tracing the intricate shapes of alien geometry. "We've learned cooperation," she said softly. "We've learned responsibility. But the question remains, are we ready for what comes next?" The watchers' patterns pulsed as if in response. Their message was simple, yet profound. The journey has begun. The next step will define you. The skies had become a stage for a cosmic dialogue, and humanity was learning to listen. Every day, more people felt the watcher's presence, not as an abstract threat, but as a living, intelligent awareness observing and responding to human thought. The global network of signals had matured, allowing collective action and understanding in ways never before imagined. Elena and Marco had become the focal point for the world's connection with the watchers. They coordinated signals, interpreted patterns, and helped mediate disputes that arose from fear and misunderstanding. But even they could sense that a turning point was approaching, a moment when humanity would be called to prove its readiness fully. Then it happened. Across every continent, the watchers' energy intensified, forming an immense lattice of light above the earth. Unlike previous displays, this one was solid, coherent, and unmistakably intelligent. The patterns were no longer abstract. They represented forms that humans could recognize, faces, hands, and gestures of beings that seemed to embody intelligence itself. Humanity had never seen anything like it. The watchers reached out, not physically, but mentally. Thoughts, emotions, and visions flowed into every mind connected to the global network. They conveyed knowledge, history, and understanding. Civilizations across the universe that had risen and fallen, discoveries of incredible depth, and the consequences of choices made without wisdom. It was overwhelming, even for the most advanced human minds. Amid the flood of understanding, a challenge became clear. The watchers were asking humanity to act, to demonstrate that it could wield knowledge responsibly. The manuscript, the signals, and the skies had all led to this moment. Humanity was no longer being observed passively, it was being tested actively. The first test was cooperation on an unprecedented scale. The watchers projected a problem, not physical, but ethical and logical. A simulation of a planetary system threatened by forces that could destroy life if mishandled. The solution required humans to think collectively, prioritize empathy over self-interest, and balance immediate survival against long-term growth. Governments, organizations, and individuals had to set aside political, cultural, and personal differences. Scientists debated physics, philosophers debated ethics, and ordinary citizens contributed insight and intuition. The network allowed thoughts to merge in real time, creating a human consciousness larger than any individual, working in tandem with the watchers. At first, progress was slow. Old habits, greed, fear, and suspicion surfaced. Some groups tried to dominate the process, while others withdrew in despair. But slowly, understanding emerged. Decisions were made not for power, but for the collective good. Solutions took shape. Humanity acted as a single entity, guided by the Watchers' lessons, and the simulation stabilized. The Watchers responded with an explosion of energy, not destructive, but celebratory. Light cascaded across the skies, forming patterns that conveyed approval, encouragement, and a sense of profound connection. Humanity had passed its first major test, the ability to cooperate intelligently, ethically, and selflessly under pressure. But the Watchers' communication was far from complete. They presented a vision of the universe's vastness, civilizations beyond human comprehension, and the delicate balance that allowed intelligent life to thrive. They revealed that observation alone had limits. True understanding required dialogue, empathy, and moral clarity. Knowledge without wisdom, they indicated, could lead to collapse. Elena realized the Watchers were offering humanity a choice: remain isolated, limited to Earth, or embrace connection, knowledge, and responsibility on a cosmic scale. It was a choice that would define the species for centuries, if not millennia. Yet fear persisted. Some nations, factions, and individuals refused to participate fully, suspicious of alien intentions. Militias tried to disrupt the network, governments debated aggressive action, and rumors of hidden agendas spread. The Watchers observed these actions as well, making it clear that failure to cooperate fully had consequences, not immediately destructive, but morally and socially significant. In the midst of the tension, a global council convened, this time not just of scientists or leaders, but of humans chosen for wisdom, empathy, and moral clarity from across all cultures. They debated, negotiated, and reflected on the responsibilities the Watchers had placed before humanity. At the climax of the council, a collective decision emerged. Humanity would act as one, embracing knowledge, cooperation, and responsibility, while safeguarding autonomy and diversity. The choice was deliberate, ethical, and mindful, precisely the qualities the Watchers had been testing for centuries. Then, in a final gesture, the Watchers revealed themselves in a form perceivable by every human eye, beings of light and energy, constantly shifting, yet undeniably intelligent and aware. They did not speak with voices, nor touch physically, but humanity felt their presence as deeply as a heartbeat. You have been watched. You have been tested. You have chosen to rise above fear and selfishness. You are now ready for understanding. Elena and Marco watched, tears in their eyes, as the Watchers' patterns intertwined with human thought, forming a bridge between species. Humanity had passed its test, not because of technology, power, or fear, but because it had embraced empathy, cooperation, and wisdom. The skies slowly returned to their natural appearance, but the connection remained. Humans could still perceive the Watchers' presence through thought, insight, and shared understanding. Knowledge and guidance were available, but always with the caveat that responsibility must govern its use. For the first time, humanity understood its place not as masters of Earth, but as participants in a vast, interconnected universe. The Watchers had revealed a truth that would echo across generations. Observation alone was not enough to shape civilizations. Only moral clarity, empathy, and unity could allow intelligence to flourish across the cosmos. Elena turned to Marco, gazing at the stars with a new understanding. "We've seen the Watchers," she said softly. "We've learned from them. And we finally understood. The journey is ours to continue, together." Marco nodded. "The future isn't given. It's built. And now, we have the tools, the knowledge, and the choice to build it wisely." The Watchers remained, patient, observant, and guiding. Humanity had passed one test, but the universe held countless others. Yet for the first time in history, humans faced the cosmos not as victims or pawns, but as a species capable of understanding, connection, and responsibility. The skies above pulsed faintly, as if acknowledging humanity's choice. And with that pulse came a profound truth. The Watchers had always been patient, not because time mattered to them, but because humanity needed time to learn, grow, and finally, choose wisely. The stage was set for the next chapter of human history, one in which knowledge, empathy, and cosmic awareness would shape the destiny of a species that had finally realized it was never truly alone. The world was forever changed. Even after the skies returned to their familiar, earthly blue, the knowledge of the Watchers remained imprinted in every human mind that had reached for understanding. Humanity had survived the trials, passed the tests, and glimpsed the infinite intelligence that had observed Earth for centuries. But survival was not the reward was awareness. Elena and Marco walked through a quiet city at dawn. Streets once filled with fear and chaos now carried a subtle hum of cooperation. Communities had learned to collaborate in ways previously unimaginable. Governments were reorganizing their priorities around shared goals: education, sustainability, and ethical use of the knowledge the Watchers had offered. "Do you think they'll ever leave?" Marco asked quietly, looking at the sky that now seemed peaceful but alive with invisible energy. Elena shook her head. "I don't think leaving is their way. They've never interfered directly. They don't need to. They watch, guide, and teach. And now, we understand that we must choose to grow, with or without them visible." Indeed, the Watchers had made themselves known but left humanity to its own devices. They no longer intervened unless a situation required guidance, but their presence was felt in moments of insight, ethical clarity, and understanding. Science advanced rapidly, but it was no longer just about invention. It was about responsibility. Humanity began to think not only of what it could do, but what it should do. Children born in the years following the first full contact with the Watchers grew up seeing the universe differently. Their education included lessons derived from the Watchers' signals: empathy, cooperation, cosmic awareness, and the understanding that life was interconnected in ways Earth had only begun to comprehend. Art, music, and literature reflected the patterns of light, geometry, and rhythm once projected across the skies. Culture had evolved alongside understanding, becoming richer, deeper, and more thoughtful. But humanity had also learned humility. The Watchers' observation reminded them that knowledge was not a measure of superiority, but a responsibility. Wars became less frequent, Not because conflict disappeared, but because people realized the consequences extended far beyond immediate gain. Every decision carried weight, echoing across communities and generations. Elena and Marco often reflected on the manuscript, the discovery that had begun the journey. What had once seemed an improbable relic from the past had been the key to the future. It had shown that humanity was being watched, yes, but it had also shown what was required to earn understanding and wisdom. One evening, as the sun set, Elena received a mental presence, a gentle wave of thought, calm and observant. The watchers had not sent words, nor signals of instruction. Instead, they offered a feeling, approval, encouragement, and patience. Humanity had proven it could rise to the challenge, but the journey would continue. The universe was vast, and knowledge would always be incomplete. Growth, understanding, and moral responsibility were eternal tasks. Across the globe, people began to notice subtle signs of the watchers in daily life. Patterns appeared in clouds, the rhythm of tides, and even in the behavior of animals. Not as threats, but as reminders. The universe was alive with intelligence, and humans were part of a network far greater than they had ever imagined. Elena and Marco spoke to groups of students, scientists, and ordinary citizens, sharing lessons learned over the past months. "We are no longer alone," Elena said. "And yet, we are still human. We have the capacity for greatness, and for failure. The Watchers have given us guidance, yes, but the choices remain ours. How we act, how we care, how we think, that will define us more than any alien observation ever could." Marco added, "Our past was watched. Our present is guided. And our future is ours to shape responsibly. Every thought, every decision, every moment matters, because we are not alone in the universe anymore. We have been reminded that intelligence is rare, and that wisdom requires patience, empathy, and unity." As night fell, the stars shone brighter than ever. Elena looked up and felt the Watcher's presence, not distant, not intrusive, but constant. Humanity had discovered that it had never truly been alone. For centuries, unseen eyes had observed, learned, and waited. And now, humans had learned, too, to watch themselves, to act wisely, and to embrace the responsibilities that came with knowledge, connection, and the awareness that the universe was alive with life far beyond Earth. The journey was far from over. Challenges would come. Conflicts, mistakes, and fear would test humanity again. But for the first time, humans faced the cosmos not as frightened creatures, but as a species aware of itself, capable of growth, and ready to participate in the vast, interconnected web of life. The Watchers remained, patient and observant, silent teachers who had waited centuries for this moment. And humanity, now awake to the truth, began to step forward, into the stars, into knowledge, and into a future shaped by choice, wisdom, and the recognition that they were never truly alone.